let's quickly see how much we can get through of this before we run out of time. Reset to defaults. Okay, so resetting to defaults, whenever you switch from one model to another, what we like to do is reset all of the settings here back to the default. So for instance, I don't know, let's take our pinwheel here. Let's change the number of arms to be a lot. And if I go and drop another pinwheel, it's going to copy the settings, right? Which is what Xlight has always done. And if you're dropping the same thing many times, that's exactly what you would like it to do. But sometimes you want it to go back to the default. And the way to get it to go back to the default is just to click on another effect and then come back to pinwheel and drop it again, and it's back in its default settings. Now, if I want these settings again, all I have to do is click on the effect, then go back up here and drop that effect again, and it still copies them. But so it copies as long if you drop the same effect that you've just clicked on again, it will copy all the settings forward. If you click on a different effect and then drop a different effect to the one that you had previously, all the settings will be reset back to their factory defaults, enabling you to always start from a common base when you want to, but giving you a quick and easy way to reset it. Now, what some people don't also understand, you can also update the settings across multiple effects using this update button here. So if I was to select all of my pinwheels, I think that's a pinwheel. No, it's not. That's a pinwheel. So if I was to select several of them and click the update button, that will actually apply those settings across multiple effects. And this update button up here does a similar thing with the colors. There is no equivalent on any of these other dialog boxes. I've looked at it. There is no easy way to add an update button and make it obvious and easy to decide exactly what you want to update, because just because you want to update the sub buffer doesn't mean you want to copy all your roto zoom settings across, or your render styles, or whatever else across. So it all got too hard. And so now we have those sets of consistent behaviors when you move amongst the models. Okay, we talked about reset defaults. We've seen spatial color curves. I'd forgotten we also added it to the single strand effect. It does the same thing that it does for everything else. Single strand. Single strand. So let's put some color back in it. Get rid of that. And you can see, so it just moves it across. So you can use that for arches and the like, I guess, using spatial color curves if that's what you want to do. Home, start of song, end of song, and pause key. So what this does is when you're playing, if you've got a Windows machine and you have a pause key on your keyboard, you can press the pause key and it will pause playing of the song. If you have a home key, it will jump to the beginning of the song. If you have an end key, it will jump to the end of the song. So just some quick navigation keys for getting around the player. Manual subbuffer editing and additional subbuffer settings. So you've seen me over here click and drag on this thing to move things around. I'm not sure if you knew it, but if you double click on it, it resets it. You can also right click on it. Full buffer will reset it as well, but there are also some predefined top half, bottom half, left half, right half. There's also thirds, which are horizontal thirds. I probably need to add vertical thirds, but there's horizontal thirds. So if you've got 3 singing faces or something, maybe that's what you want to do with it and break it up. There's also quarters, which let you quarter the particular model and quickly create a sub buffer that's set up that way. There's also an oversize, and it looks like the yellow boxes has gone away, but what's happened is the yellow box has actually been dragged way out bigger than you can even see. And that has an interesting effect, because what it does is it effectively makes the buffer that we render on substantially larger than the model. So let's just reset it here, and let's go and delete some of this crap. And let's go and grab a butterfly, because everyone knows the butterfly, right? That's how the butterfly looks. But look what happens when we set it to oversize. Effectively, what you're seeing is a zoomed in view of the butterfly, because the butterfly is now rendering on something that's actually 9 times the size of the model, and we're seeing just the middle 9th of the model. And that can be useful in some circumstances with some effects, particularly if you want to have some things move in and out of shot, and the settings that we give you don't really allow you to do that. You can now think, you can conceptually be rendering something up here in the bottom top right here, and then bring it into view, and then bring it out of view. So yeah. You can also manually edit the settings, and here you get to see what the actual settings of the buffer are. So in this case, it's set to 200. If that was 100, it would be set to the top, as you would expect. So this can also let you get some really precise manual control over exactly where the buffer goes. Conceptually, I think the bottom left is 0, 0, the top right is 100, 100, and so anything negative is off to the left of the model or off to the bottom of the model, and anything greater than 100 is up here. We don't let you go more than 9 times the size of the model. There is a price that you pay for going beyond the model, and that is that obviously the number of pixels that we have to render goes up significantly. It doesn't actually change the size of your FSCQ file, but it does change the amount of work that we have to do when we render. So it can slow things down a little bit. To be honest, it does a similar thing when you do a group. When you do a group, let's say I was to group together the matrix and the tree here, conceptually what it does is overlays a grid sitting across both of those models. And when you define a grid, when you define a model, it's actually this maximum grid size here that specifies how large that grid can be. And so conceptually it overlays, in this case, an up to a 400 by 400 size grid across the top of those models. It's a similar concept. We've talked about that. Sequence packaging. So sequence packaging, if you want to share a sequence with someone, the new way to do it is, rather than going in and hunting around for the files inside your show folder and putting them all into a zip file and hoping you got them all right, and then when they get to the other end, the person trying to piece it all back together because all of the references are now wrong and the audio file doesn't work, you can now come up to here and say, I want to package this sequence. In this case, it's telling me I haven't saved any changes, and so maybe that's a problem, and it almost certainly is. And then I can go and create a zip file. And what it will do, and let me show you one that I was working on earlier. What it does is it will go and create a zip file here. And so it will put everything into a folder inside the zip file. That folder will be the same name as your show folder. And that's really important, because by making that folder the same name as your show folder, all of the auto file path correction features of Xlights, when it loads something from a machine which wasn't the original machine it was created on, will work, and it will correct all of the file paths. It also includes the necessary RGB effects file. It would include the networks file if it exists. It includes the show folder. In this case, I had an ISCQ file, so it includes the ISCQ file. If there are pictures or videos or any other Gladiator files that were referenced, all of them will be bundled up inside the zip file. All of the XML files will be modified so they point to the correct location of all of those files, so that when the file gets to the other end, it's really just a matter of extracting that folder, making that folder your show folder, loading the sequence up, doing a render all, and saving it. And at that point, that person's show is now on your machine and ready to be safely imported into your sequence. For any of you who have done some importing of Lilia's sequences or Logan's sequences, and you face some of the challenges of getting all of those image files and everything to be exactly right, packaging sequence this way makes that whole process infinitely easier to do. Okay, I'd forgotten that Gil had added spatial color curves to Shockwave. So you can use things like the radial curves on the Shockwave. I'm not going to go into there. Same with the fan. The Galaxy. So there's a couple of changes that Gil made to the Galaxy effect. Some which are obvious and some which aren't. So he did some things to speed it up. But if you, hang on, if I make the end radius large, oh no, that's not what I wanted. If I make the width large, I think, is that it? Was it the radius or the width? Yeah. There was a width which rounds off the front of the Galaxy effect, but it only works, I think, when it doesn't overlap, and then it has problems. But it makes it look a little bit more natural than it previously did. And he's also fixed it so that you don't get gaps when you put it on really large models like your entire house or something. Cleaned a number of those sorts of things up. The Shockwave, so the Shockwave with the radial color curves. So you can see that now you've got a Shockwave that, I should get rid of that, hang on. So now you can see how that radial color curve has been applied. And that's what happens when you apply it around it. So it can create some quite interesting effects that previously were not achievable. Maybe I should get rid of that. There we go. So now you've got a Shockwave which can actually be a different color as it goes around. I think I am out of time, so I am going to stop that one there.